Let me introduce our panel for this evening. This will be a discussion moderated by Samir Saran, who is president of ORF, the Observer Research Foundation. We are really privileged to have four excellent speakers with us today. Stephen Harper, the former Prime Minister of Canada. Marise Payne, the former Foreign and Defence Minister of Australia. Maricha Shaki, a former member of European Parliament and I learned until recently a resident of the San Francisco Bay Area, now back in the Netherlands. And Tadashi Maeda-san, who is the chairman of the Japan Bank for International Cooperation, JBIC. Thank you.
So we have approximately 35 minutes to discuss what happened last year and to predict what is going to happen in the next year. If you look at the headlines, of course, 2025 was without doubt the year of Trump. In some ways, the world has been dramatically shaken up, if I am being mild, but certainly has been asked, as we discussed earlier today, some difficult questions. And while we may attribute it to Trump and his personality, but it would be fair to say that many of the questions are valid. What should be the basis of partnerships? What should we expect from our partners? Who should be underwriting costs of global public goods? How should we be thinking about issues around national sovereignty and migration and mobility, the trade dynamics, and of course, global institutions and their relevance in the world of tomorrow? They're valid questions. I'm not sure we are necessarily going to arrive at the right responses to it, but certainly it is a process that he has started, right? So clearly, 2025 was the year of Trump, but we've also seen some other significant events. And I think AI is now coming to the fore, or at least the business of AI and the economic models around AI are making big bets, and they are again altering some of the economic assumptions of the past. And I think technology, therefore, is the second headline of the year. It's a big cover. We have seen certain isms, anti-Semitism, and we saw the most recent one. And let me right now reach out to all my friends in Australia who suffered this terrible incident a couple of days ago. And Marise, we are with you. We thinking about you, sending our best wishes to your country.
Thank you, Samir.
So we have seen the rise of isms, racism. We have seen anti-Semitism and many other isms come back to the fore, getting normalized, becoming part of the mainstream. In many ways, with the polarized political climate in the world, we have given a free pass to certain behavior patterns because we are all choosing our favorite bad guy and normalizing behavior of that favorite bad guy. How do we deal with it when our politics is so divided? It's a big question for all of us. So I think the return of the isms or the normalization of the isms, for me, is the third big news. The fourth, I would argue, is the new conversations that are happening between the 4 or 5 big major actors today. The US-China relationship, a new dynamic. Let's see what happens in spring this year. But that's something that is certainly on the anvil. We are also seeing a new texture in the transatlantic relationship. I think Dhruva spoke about it. But the transatlantic relationship is very different, Marichi, and I would like to know how that relationship looks like. We are seeing, as Trump, or rather the NSS, the National Security Document itself says, we are seeing a Monroe 2.0 or a Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, what it means for Canada, Mexico, and others in the neighborhood. We are seeing that as well. And of course, then you have the big and very important relationship, or rather the role that China is playing with the global south and other parts of the world. It is perhaps the new adult in the room, or rather, at least it is positioning itself as the defender of the rules-based order, the internationalist, the pro-institutions and the pro-global order actor. Very interesting developments in the year that we just went through, and in some sense, we are going to see the lingering after effects next year as well. But let me start with President Harper, perhaps someone who's been an internationalist for much of his career, who believes in a rules-based order, the global order, order where democracies should partner together based on principles. Mr. Harper, how do you feel about all of that today?
Well, I think we've really experienced a sea change. And I know with Trump, the second Trump administration, it's very hard to separate trend from noise. There's an awful lot of noise around Trump's personal relationships with various leaders. But I do think there's a really important trend here, not one I welcome, but a really important trend that has been there in the US for a while, that Trump has put into effect and I don't think is going to go back, and that is the US no longer seeing itself as kind of the guardian of a global system, of the guardian of a series of institutions and rules, and instead acting primarily, I'm not saying entirely malevolently, but acting as more of a traditional great power, protecting its interests, its spheres of influence. And I don't think that's really going to go back, because I think you can make a pretty compelling argument from an American point of view that the old role was no longer working, and that this role, if done right, can actually be much more effective for the United States. As I say, I don't like it. It's been particularly difficult for Canada. You know, we've had the president. I mean, I know Americans have kind of heard President Trump's comments as jokes, but actually he said a lot that are not jokes. He said, you know, he wants to put through tariffs economic pressure on Canada to force Canada to join the United States. That's his position. You know, that's, you know, considering that we have a free trade agreement, 98% tariff-free goods, that, you know, we're both supposed to be committed to as a binding contract, that's pretty shocking. It's been pretty shocking for the Canadian political establishment. So look, I think this is where we're heading. Does it mean, you know, the U.S. is done as a partner? No, in many ways the U.S. is still the world's most desirable major partner, but you know, what it does mean is that aligning with the U.S. kind of on values alone, in fact, it's just not sufficient. If you're not aligned on interests, and if your interests don't involve hard power that either make you a partner or give you leverage, then I think you're going to be in real difficulty.
And the neighborhood. What do you think is the impact on the neighborhood? Canada, you mentioned, but you know, there's also the determination of a Western Hemisphere which is curated out of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it's hard. Look, I think, Samir, the jury's out. You know, I think in the case of Mexico, unless Trump, you know, really goes too far, I think the Mexicans will kind of eventually go along with whatever he wants. In other parts of the hemisphere, Venezuela and that, where he's using more coercive tactics, I just don't know how that's going to play out. In the case of Canada, I do think that what has happened is going to cause Canada longer term to, I think it's actually in many ways a good thing, to diversify its export markets and its relationships and become less dependent on the United States, as I think Europe is going to do as well. I do think this is a sea change.
So since you invoked Europe, let me turn to Marise. Marise, your views on, by the way, Marise is not only a former parliamentarian and also a neighbor here from Stanford, where she was at the Artificial Intelligence Center. She's also a best-selling author of Tech Coup, a book on big tech and some of its ramifications for all of us. So sitting where you sit, looking back at the year, Trump certainly, but technology as a trend line as well. Your thoughts, Marise?
So I think from a perspective of Europe and probably all former allies, this has been a year of betrayal.
Year of betrayal?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Ukraine has been betrayed. Partners have been betrayed, European partners, but also...
But Ukraine was never a partner of the US, so why should Ukraine feel betrayed?
No, it was a partner in the sense that the US was helping to provide security guarantees against an act of aggression, a violation of international law by the Russian Federation. But it's also betrayal of principles. And I think, you know, it's adherence to international rules-based order, but also adherence to respect for minorities, freedom of expression, even though free speech is the mantra, it's obviously not practiced. And I think the future of democracy is at stake as a result. The national security strategy has really landed like a bomb for many Europeans. I don't think it should have, because everything that's written down there has been said in one form or another. But I don't agree that America is still the partner of choice for many. I think it is a partner of necessity, but that trends to move away from dependencies in terms of security, in terms of trade, in terms of tech dependency that can be weaponized, are on their way. But European countries now don't have all the options that they would like, and that probably makes them feel more, vulnerable, but also angry. And the role that tech companies play, just because we are gathered here among other reasons to talk about the AI summit, we're in the heart of Silicon Valley. I think the tech companies that have aligned themselves with this administration, that are seeking short-term gains, are taking an enormous gamble as well. Because there's no doubt that this is a controversial presidency, whether you like it or not. The implications globally are enormous, but there's also a chance that there will be a swing of the pendulum in another direction. And then the question is, what happens to the tech companies that are now the foot soldiers of this administration, using data to identify people that are being picked up from the streets, sent to detention facilities without access to lawyers. The scanning of eligibility for visas now happens with the turning over of social media accounts that will be scanned for unfavorable opinions. The role that these companies play also in cheering on the trade war with Europe, wanting to see a price, quote unquote, for rules that are in place in terms of antitrust, in terms of data protection in Europe. It is not only a abandoning of the rules, but it's a changing of the rules that facilitates the right of the strongest. And it's leading to rearmament, to concerns about nuclear treaties. And this is a very, very dangerous situation where everybody is in high tension, where escalations could really flare up, and where even alliances like NATO, for example, are not taken for granted anymore. So to me, this is a very, very dark moment in time for all the principles that I care about. And I hope, let me express a hope for the next year.
I was going to come to that because this was nearly becoming as dark as this room.
Yeah.
So tell me what is the silver lining here now? What should we be looking forward to?
Well, what I hope, and this is where India is incredibly important, is that the next year will be a year of new alliances. So traditional alliances are fracturing, and it becomes even more important how the Canadas of this world, the European countries of this world, the Australias, the Japans, the traditional allies in supporting a rules-based order, being democracies, are working together in new ways. And I think that is the task before us.
So the positive side is that since everyone is looking to diversify, we might actually come up with new partnerships and new arrangements for the future. For example, the India-EU FTA, or the one that we are about to sign with New Zealand. I mean, India itself is diversifying, right? So I always tell people perhaps Trump's biggest contribution would be the India-EU FTA. Both of us would not have put our feet on the pedal had we not had the reasons to do so. But Marise, I'm going to come back to you on one part, but let me turn to Maida-san. Maida-san, you're an old ally of America. What is the view from Tokyo on 2025 and any other aspects that you want to speak about?
Well, in 1994, is a peak time of Japan's economy and percentage share. As the second largest economy, it's at 17.8%. And then at that time, China, the percentage share is only 2%. Now, 30 years later, last year, 2024, Japan's share decreased to 4%, and in China, it became 17%. The United States share remained unchanged, 27%. We have been experienced a very tough confrontation with the United States during the Bush 41 and Clinton administration. By means of that structural impediment initiative, the United States tried to press down the Japanese economy, even if that Japan is one of the closest ally. So in my view, the Trump administration, Trump's 47 is even very different from Trump 45. But in the bottom line, the attacking that the number two, the economy, this kind of character remain unchanged. So that now, therefore, that's the
So what you're saying is American behavior to allies has not changed.
not changed. However, Trump's lose its discipline for that kind of a vision, like the rule of law or democracy. He doesn't care. So that's a most tough and also very dangerous phenomenon of Trump 47, I believe. And then that U.S. and China are going to have at least 2 meetings in 2026. Trump and Xi Jinping, and in Beijing, and in China, Xi Jinping will president the United States probably. And that we are closely watching that behavior of PCR. And then that's how outrageous regime, that's a dictatorship of Xi Jinping. But Trump doesn't care. That's the most dangerous. But now the combination of that pressing down of the number 2 economy, and also that some of the transaction deal we made. And if my point that the really dangerous point is that he ignored that the Taiwan Strait to make some of a deal with Xi Jinping PCR. That is a very dangerous moment from our point of view, by the way. Having said that, we have to rely on that United States-Japan alliance. And then that this is after the World War II, this is a existing framework. And that we are very much carry on as this alliance very faithfully. And we built up that budget of defense budget in percentage share of GDP will increase from 1% to 2%. The Trump administration require same thing all of allies to increase the defense budget. But my point is that only that percentage share of GDP is just the measurement tool, and the Trump administration doesn't care the reality and the real contents, what's the percentage share, and also that the contents of the defense budget. So that this is it's my kind of impression that when I had the discussion with the Trump White House, so that they're broad picture, but no contents. Therefore, that we have some of a room for exploiting to this. We have to smart enough. For example, that tariff negotiation, our government has already accepted to deploy $550 billion. 550 billion, a huge amount of money. And then also that because of Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, he's a hedge fund guy, that trader of the bond from Brooklyn. He started GP LP structure. US GP, Japan's LP, so that the decision making of investment made by Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, our law is to pay cash. This is outrageous. However, having said that, we are going to invest from a strategic point of view to the US, in particular AI, and also semiconductor, and also AI-related infrastructure. This is very important for that. So I said that in Trump administration policies, no contents, just a direction. Therefore, that we have to have a good chance to exploit to this zero content. We need to prove that contents by means of the.
So you have flexibility.
Yes, so that we don't want to tolerate that Howard Lutnick's attitude. However, we're going to make the good, strong commitment to make investment to AI, and also that the AI data center, for example, AI data center needs a huge volumes of power, electricity. This is not sustainable. So in Japan, we have some technology to save the power, like using photonics, electrics convergence technology that NVIDIA already have, and the Japanese company NTT already have. Therefore, they're very cutting-edge technology to be deployed correctly in the United States, our partner in the US. So the private sector in the United States is a long-term partner, regardless of the administration. So Trump administration, only one-term administration, so that in 2029 maybe change. So that we need our relations continue beyond Trump 47, so that we need to have a more long-term view.
And Mehta-san, I'm going to ask you about the positives and what do you look forward to. I'm going to come back to you, but let me now turn to Marise. Marise, I saved you for the last because in many ways you are speaking for the entire region, the Indo-Pacific region, including. So I'm saving you for that particular perspective from there. What has the year been for the ASEAN countries, Australia, New Zealand, the Quad, and of course the whole Indo-Pacific political architecture that was being invested into? So sitting where you are, how do you look at that?
So I think none of this is particularly surprising. We had a dress rehearsal in the first iteration of the Trump administration, and the campaigning process to the point of the election at the end of last year was pretty transparent in terms of the policy approach. So for partners and allies, there was a pretty instructive path ahead of what we should be prepared for.
Actually, he's delivering on what he promised.
A lot of it.
Yeah.
And more.
So, I mean, let's be fair, right?
And
so,
more.
He had pretty much announced his intentions of doing exactly what he has done thereafter.
That's right, and has the opportunity to do so, and that is that's what I live and breathe, the process of democracy. So in a system like the United States, if you win, you win, and your partners and your allies have to work out how to deal with that, and also how to be effective advocates and effective interlocutors on things which we think are important. So. That does not detract for a moment, though, Samir, from how complex this is and how challenging this is for many partners. And I think from Maricha's observations about Europe, we feel that viscerally. We can see what that looks like. I think the things you left out of the challenges of 2025 were wars, Ukraine and Russia, and the conflict in the Middle East, which have super complicated a lot of the relationships and engagements. But in the Indo-Pacific, for example, and I've had this conversation with other colleagues recently, when you look at the administration's decision to change very much the approach of the State Department in terms of development assistance, for example, that doesn't have so much of an impact in what we call the Blue Pacific, the continents of the islands, I should say, of the Pacific in the south of the globe, as it were, including Australia and New Zealand, but many tiny countries of, as I was saying to Stephen earlier tonight, 10,000 people, which have the same seat at the United Nations as all the rest of us often. But in Southeast Asia, it does have an impact. It has a $60 million impact in development assistance in ASEAN. I'm sorry, not the United Nations. In ASEAN, it has a significant impact. And so those countries are having to determine where to recalibrate. Do they recalibrate on their climate programs? Do they recalibrate on infrastructure? And what does that look like? And China and the PRC, the CCP, are an enormous driver of the competition in that space. Nature, of course, abhors a vacuum. So if a vacuum is created, it's filled. And that is what we are seeing
is it
happen.
your case that end of 2025, countries of the Indo-Pacific are more inclined to see China as a dependable partner?
No, I don't necessarily say that at all, because they know that comes with
strings attached.
If I may say respectfully, strings attached. Some would say coercion and bullying, but I'll say strings attached. And so it's not so much seeing it as a preferred partner at all. It's an inevitability about what fills the vacuum. And there are countries in ASEAN...
So it's not the preferred choice, but the only choice in many instances.
Indeed. There are countries in ASEAN whose entire power grid is owned by the PRC. And so that makes your options very limited as to what you can do. So I think those conversations, those balances are very sensitive ones. And Europe, I may say, Canada as well, Japan most certainly, Korea, have been part of stepping into that space to try to address some of those gaps. Now, that will, I think, change once the once other funding through the United States perhaps is forthcoming. But at the moment, that is a really significant challenge.
Okay, so I think this was a good assessment of the year that was with us, 2025. I'm going to ask you all to look ahead. Going into 2026, what are 2 or 3 trends, developments, and maybe avenues of positivity that we can look forward to? As we step into 2026, what would be the assessments of 2 or 3 big developments to watch, geographies to look for, innovations or technologies that could dramatically alter
Let me just throw out one. I do think that in 2025, we've seen from the Trump administration what I'll call peak tariffs.
peak tariffs?
Peak tariffs. And it's not just that, you know, if you look back to so-called Liberation Day, the president has watered down that agenda considerably, but the Supreme Court is going to invalidate the current authorities with which he is applying tariffs arbitrarily. That doesn't mean he's going to stop entirely, nor, by the way, do I think he should. I think there are instances where he has legitimate reason to use tariffs, but the kind of comprehensive, global-wide, willy-nilly approach, I think that is of the past, not just because some of it hasn't worked, not just because the court's striking it down, but the cost of living pressures that's adding to in the United States are eroding his popularity. And this is the biggest. We can complain internationally about things we haven't liked about the Trump administration, but the biggest problem at home is that one of the reasons he was elected was cost of living issues, and he hasn't made that any better.
And Prime Minister Harper, outside of the US, any other bright spots that we should be looking out for? Barring the renewed and initial romance between Canada and India, any other positive development?
No, we've got a new prime minister. He wasn't my choice, but he has gone around the world.
You know, but I have told folks that if there was a successor who kind of even sounds like you on many occasions, you know, Carney sounds more like Stephen Harper.
He actually uses my phraseology. It's very funny. No, look, it wasn't my choice, but he's, especially on the international front, he's corrected a lot of damaged relationships we had for no national interest reason whatsoever. India, the Gulf.
I mean, Trudeau had pissed off every major leader of the world in the same week.
I'm not going to elaborate on it. You said it for me.
Okay.
Look, the only other thing I'll say, I don't know about geopolitics, so that's a good thing for Canada. I don't know about geopolitics. I don't see a lot of real promising things on the horizon. But what I do believe, and I know there's all kinds of worries about artificial intelligence, things we talked about this afternoon, about the effects on the workforce, et cetera. But I just continue to think that overall the technological revolution is going to continue to make changes in human life that are overwhelmingly for the positive. And I don't think there's any force on the planet that's going to stop that process.
So your 2 positive developments to watch out for, the Supreme Court and technology. I think that's basically. Okay, so I mean, sorry, I'm simplifying your proposition. Marise.
So I think, ironically, when one has a partner who is going their own path, their own way, you look for different and new relationships. And there will be, I think, some really positive developments, and you've referred to some in terms of what India is doing with whether they're comprehensive strategic partnerships, whether they're trade relationships. They will continue to build in 2026. I'm confident about that because that's a survival mechanism for so many, and I think that's a good thing. That diversification, which you spoke about, and Australia had a very harsh education on diversification during COVID because we were undergoing severe economic coercion and had to diversify our markets in a very short, sharp way. That is an opportunity and should be seen as an opportunity, and I think a lot to build in that space.
So we should be looking forward to the new geometries of international alignments that will emerge in 2026.
I think so.
I think that's something to look forward to. Marise?
Well, I think part of the responses that we'll see in many parts of the world from the stepping away of the U.S. alliance or role that the U.S. played is more strategic autonomy. So countries will try to be less dependent and more autonomous in their options of actions. as I said, I look forward to new alliances, and I really hope that they will also focus on guardrails around the use of AI, because AI platforms will become the new tools of coercion if we're not careful, not just economically, but also in terms of our politics, our communication. The way that the U.S. administration has defined AI and AI platforms as tools for hegemonic ambitions. This is literal. This is not an opinion. If you read the AI action plan, it's very, very clear. Can lead to all kinds of really bad outcomes. I think bad for everyone. And it was not that long ago that the world came together in terms of governments appreciating that the impact of generative AI specifically could be so significant that we needed guardrails, global norms, red lines, etc. The US stepping away from that has made it an outlier, but the majority of governments still believe that we need those guardrails. And so I hope that part of those new coalitions will also focus on new ways of finding international norms, not just the preserving of existing
And do you think
ones.
EU being the regulation capital of the world is going to play its part in defining some of those guardrails?
Well, we really have to be careful not to make that a caricature. I hear that a lot, but actually the regulations are not that many, and they're being watered down as we speak. I don't think that's the right signal at the right time. I also think we should focus on building, and not on regulating, because the times have changed dramatically, and this is something that Europe needed anyway. So it's a real question whether the EU will be a regulation capital of the world. But there's a difference between, how strong its own data protection rules should be, or whether we can find new coalitions around new threats from AI, and I'm talking about the latter. But they're obviously related, because if the legitimacy for regulation is attacked, which is also something the Trump administration is doing, then the question is, do we consider that a threat to sovereignty as well? Because if you have rules that have been democratically adopted, whether I or you or we all like them or not, we have processes of how to adjust them, and that process does not involve intimidation and threats from foreign entities.
Maida-san, the final word to you.
Yes.
The bright spots for next year.
Okay, well, talking about China, I had meetings with all of the top leaders of ASEAN last year and this year. And then I found the country like, even a country like Laos, PDR, or a country like Cambodia, they don't want to be a colony of China. Mm-hmm. They feel some integrity and also that be independent from China. But the problem then is that they don't have any other choice. They cannot trust Trump administration in the United States. Therefore, that's someone has to fill this gap. I think that the Japan, Australia, and India all together can fill the gap. And then the United States is not able to dismiss it because it was a series of the allies and the partners of like-minded countries, and also with the partnerships with the European Unions. We need to have more cooperation. That's one thing. Two, in Trump administration inside, there are some of relevant member of cabinet like Secretary of State Mark Rubio, Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent. And then this is very chaotic situation because of not well organized Trump administration. But now for that midterm election next year, they need to more well organized. So that bad guy, I hope that bad guy has to leave.
Okay.
And then to be more integrated by the more relevant member of the cabinet, I hope. And then that's now that this is already starting. I had a chat with Chief of Staff Susan Wiles in the White House in November, and also about some a telephone conversation with her. And then there's some of my hope that will have this kind of issue, the reshuffle may happen. I hope.
So the positive sign is a reshuffle may happen. Yes. Okay. Look, I think we've had a wonderful 34 minutes with all of you. It's difficult to sum up what we heard today in the last 1 minute that I have. But a wise person said to me a few weeks ago that there are 4 big conversations happening in the world. The first, between the US and individual countries that they're dealing with, they're negotiating with. Great coverage, lots of tweets, lots of social media discussions, pushbacks, and recriminations. That's the first conversation that's happening, much reported, much engaged with. The second conversation is happening between the US and China. Again, something that it's at a slower pace, but equally important, equally compelling, and again, something to watch out for. The third is happening between China and the rest of the world, and the Chinese are also beginning to find their own niche or a new niche for themselves. I mean, I think they see this as a moment of opportunity. And the fourth conversation, which is hardly noted or hardly engaged with, but is seminal and deep, is the one that is happening between the rest of the world. Other countries are talking to each other. Even as this year went by, we saw a number of countries begin to think about a future where they will be more deeply engaged with each other. And I think many of these conversations will become the essential blocks of what emerges tomorrow once the dust settles. So multilateralism is being in many ways renegotiated, reset, re-architected in 2025. And I think that process continues into 2026. Please join me in applauding this panel for their contributions this evening. And thank you so much for being with us. And of course, congratulations to Dhruva for 5 years of ORF America, and may we have exciting 5 years ahead, Dhruva. Best of luck. Thank you.